Hi everyone. Welcome back. We're glad to have you with us today. So let's start. My unfaithful wife's lover had the audacity to demand that I give her up, but I made sure to get my revenge swiftly and fairly. I'm Mark Thompson. I used to be married to Lisa Thompson. We had been together for 17 years before it all came crashing down. Naturally, I was the one who got the blame. Divorce courts in this country always seem to favor the woman, granting her full custody and often giving her the chance to turn the kids against their father. It's as if the system was set up by people who despise men. Lisa and I had two kids, a 14-year-old son and a 16-year-old daughter. I thought we were living the dream. I loved my wife, and I genuinely believed she felt the same about me. Our children were bright, athletic, and well-adjusted. Our daughter, Haley, was a daddy's girl through and through, while our son, Ryan, was sociable and athletic. I had a solid career as a mechanical engineer, and Lisa worked as an accountant. We both stayed in great shape and looked good for our age. Haley looked up to me, especially since she excelled in math and science and dreamed of becoming an engineer like her old man. At 16, she got her driver's license and shared my passion for cars. We spent our weekends going to car shows and working on my collection of vintage Ford Mustangs. She even helped out with home improvement projects, learning the basics of plumbing, electrical work, and more. For anything related to school, friendships, or even boys, she came straight to me. We were incredibly close. Ryan, on the other hand, wasn't much into cars. He had a knack for English literature and civics, and he often talked about becoming a lawyer. He was closer to Lisa. Lately, though, Lisa had been acting a bit strange. She seemed distant, often lost in her own world. When I asked her if something was wrong, she just brushed it off. Then, one Friday evening, I came home at my usual time around 6. Lisa was already there, but I noticed there wasn't a hint of dinner cooking, and Haley didn't come to greet me. I assumed both kids were out with friends. I headed upstairs to change and saw something odd. Lisa had laid out a little black dress along with some lacy underwear, stockings, and a pair of high heels. It looked like we had plans, but she hadn't mentioned anything. Lisa was in the bathroom, putting on makeup when I walked in. "Where are we headed tonight, sweetheart?" I asked, unbuttoning my dress shirt. "We're not going anywhere," she replied curtly. "Then why the fancy outfit laid out on the bed?" "I'm going out tonight," she said matter-of-factly. "Really? And where exactly are you going dressed like that without me? And where are the kids?" "The kids are staying at friends' houses tonight. I've got a date, and I probably won't be home until tomorrow morning," she replied without a hint of shame. "A date?" I stammered. "You're leaving for the night? You expect me to be okay with that?" "Yes, that's exactly what I mean. If it goes well, I'll spend the night with him." "Absolutely not. If you want to cheat, do it after we're divorced." I shot back, furious. "Stop being ridiculous. There won't be a divorce. This is just one night. One night to remind myself I'm still attractive to other men." "If you truly love me, you'll let me have this," she said coldly. "If you loved me, you wouldn't even consider such a thing," I countered. "I do love you, Mark, but I need this. I'm getting older, and I want to feel desirable to younger men again. Kevin is 10 years younger and has been flirting with me for months." I finally said yes to his offer. "It's just one night to boost my self-esteem," she explained as if it were the most reasonable thing in the world. "I won't stand for this," I said, my voice steely. "Do you remember our wedding vows? You're breaking them. Don't be dramatic. It's only one night. I swear it'll never happen again." "You must think I'm an idiot. How could I ever trust you again? You walk out that door, and we're done. I'll see a lawyer first thing in the morning," I warned. "Don't be a fool," she snapped. "There's not going to be a divorce. I'll come back tomorrow and be the loving wife you've always had. If you try to divorce me, I'll fight tooth and nail. You'll lose the house, most of the assets, and custody of the kids. I'll make sure they think you're the one who broke up this family. You say you love me, yet you're willing to do all that. I do love you, Mark, but I'm not backing down. I need this. It's one night. Afterward, everything will go back to normal," she insisted. "And in a few years, when you feel old again, will you find another younger man?" I asked bitterly. "I swear it won't happen again. This is just to boost my confidence, nothing more," she said dismissively. "If you go through with this, I've already told you what will happen. You'll be throwing away everything we've built together. I warned one last time. She ignored me and continued getting ready. When she came downstairs, clutch in hand, she glanced at herself in the mirror one last time. I heard a car honk outside. "He's here. I gotta go. I'll see you in the morning," she said, leaning in to kiss me goodbye. I turned my head away, and she kissed the air instead. She scowled. "Phoenix, be that way. Once you're over your little tantrum, everything will be back to normal." As she walked toward the door, I made one final plea. "If you step out that door, this marriage is over. Think hard about whether this is worth losing everything we've built together." She hesitated for a moment, but then turned back. "I'm not throwing anything away. I'll be back, and everything will be fine," she said before stepping out and closing the door behind her. As soon as the door clicked shut, grief hit me hard. I sat in silence, mourning the loss of my marriage and the woman I'd loved for 2 decades. 17 years of marriage, a year engaged, and 2 years of dating, all down the drain. There'd been no signs of dissatisfaction. We had a decent relationship and rarely fought. Even in the bedroom, she never asked for more. After half an hour of staring into nothing, I realized she wasn't coming back that night. It was time to stop wallowing and start planning. We lived in a spacious 4-bedroom house. Our master bedroom, Haley's room, Ryan's room, and a guest room with its own bathroom. I decided the guest room would be mine. It took hours to move my belongings out of what had been our bedroom. I knew the divorce would be brutal. We lived in a no-fault state where the courts often favored the woman. Lisa would likely get the house, the kids, and financial support, leaving me with little. I had to be smart. I set up my new bedroom and went to my office to sort out the finances. I transferred half of our joint checking and savings into a separate account, paid off and canceled the credit cards, and applied for new ones in my name. I made a mental note to change my direct deposit and split investments on Monday. That night, I poured myself a glass of Jim Beam. Sleep didn't come easy. My mind raced with thoughts. Should I have stopped her? Confronted the guy? Taken a bat to him? By dawn, I'd had enough. I showered, dressed, and made breakfast. Around 9, Lisa walked in, cheerful as ever. "Good morning, sweetheart. I told you I'd be back," she said with a bright smile. I didn't even look at her. My anger had simmered all night, turning my love into something dark and cold. "Honey, where are you?" she called out. "I even cleaned up before coming home." Finally, she found me in my office. "There you are. I'm back just like I promised. Now we can get back to normal." She walked over with open arms, expecting a hug. I leaned back and said coldly, "Keep your filthy lips away from me. Who knows what they've touched?" Her eyes widened in shock. I'd never spoken to her that way before. Before she could respond, I added, "Before you touch me again, I'll need a full panel STD test and a notarized clean report. As far as intimacy goes, I wouldn't touch you with a 10-foot pole, even with a dozen condoms." Her shock turned to anger. "You're still nursing your bruised ego," she sneered. "I'm going to nap. I had a long night, and you'll apologize for your rudeness when you calm down." She stormed out. I smiled, knowing she'd be back soon. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, she barged in, red with rage. "What the hell did you do? Where are your clothes? Your toiletries? What's going on?" I looked up calmly. "What do you mean? Your closet is empty. Your drawers are empty. My things are exactly where they should be. In my room." "Your room?" she repeated, confused. "Yes. I've moved into the guest room. I'll stay there until I find an apartment." Her glare intensified. "We'll talk later. You'll cool down and move back. Things will go back to normal." "Not until I see that notarized report," I said, turning back to my computer. I stayed in my office most of the day, avoiding her. The kids came home in the afternoon, and I wondered how long it would take them to realize something was off. I browsed apartment listings and scheduled viewings for Tuesday. I also printed financial statements for my lawyer appointment on Monday. Later that evening, Haley peeked into my office. "Dad, dinner's ready." "Okay, sweetie," I said, getting up. Lisa had dressed up, done her makeup, and cooked my favorite meal. She handed me a glass of wine, leaning in for a kiss. I took the glass, walked to the sink, and poured it out. Then, I grabbed a tumbler and filled it with more Jim Beam. The kids noticed immediately. At the table, I focused on Haley and Ryan, trying to keep the conversation light. But the tension was thick. "Dad, aren't you going to eat?" Ryan asked. "No, not hungry," I replied flatly. The awkward silence hung over us. After dinner, I refilled my glass and went back to my office without helping to clear the table. After shutting down my computer, I grabbed my truck keys and headed out. I needed time to think, so I went to a quiet restaurant for dinner and then stopped at a bar for a couple of drinks. It was late when I got back, and I noticed Lisa's light was still on. I made sure to shut my office door loudly, locked it, and wedged a chair under the knob. A few minutes later, she tried the door and knocked, but I ignored her. The next morning, I was up early. It was Sunday, and I decided to spend the whole day watching football. I made a pot of coffee and started cooking omelets when Haley walked in. "Hey, sweetie, want an omelet?" I asked. "Sure, Dad." "Thanks," she said, grabbing a glass of juice and sitting at the table. Ryan came in a few minutes later. "I'll make yours next," I told him while Haley started eating. I was just finishing up when Lisa walked into the kitchen. She grabbed a cup, only to find the coffee pot empty. "You couldn't leave a cup for me?" she asked irritably. "The pot's right there," I replied flatly. "You know how to make it." She rolled her eyes. "Whatever. So, you're making omelets?" "Yep. Just finished. Feel free to make yourself one," I said as I put Ryan's plate on the table and started putting everything away. I wasn't going to make anything for her. After breakfast, I left the kitchen and parked myself on the couch, ready to watch the games. Around noon, Lisa came in with a plate of food and a beer. "I brought you lunch so you wouldn't have to get up," she said, trying to sound cheerful. Without even looking at her, I swept the plate and beer off the table with my foot. The food spilled onto the carpet, but I didn't care. "What the hell, Mark?" she shouted. I got up, walked to the kitchen to grab another beer, and sat back down without saying a word. The mess was hers to clean up. "We need to talk," she said, trying to keep calm. "Shut up. The game's on," I replied. "For God's sake, the kids have noticed something is wrong," she snapped. "They'll figure it out when I move out," I said coldly. "You're not moving out. There will be no divorce," she insisted, storming off. Later that afternoon, Haley and Ryan approached me during halftime. "Dad, what's going on with you and Mom?" Haley asked. "You may as well know. Your mom and I are getting a divorce," I said bluntly. "It's between us. We both love you." "But why?" Ryan asked, upset. "Because your mother did something I can't accept," I explained. Even after I told her how I felt, she didn't care. "You mean her date on Friday night?" Haley asked, surprising me. "You knew about that?" "Yes," she shrugged. "Mom told us you were upset about it." "So, you know she cheated on me?" I asked. "No, she didn't," Haley argued. "She told you beforehand, so it wasn't really cheating. It was just one night in 20 years. If you loved her, you'd let it go." "You still here? Stunt." She had taken Lisa's side completely. "If she loved me, she wouldn't have even considered it," I said firmly. "Dad, it was just one time. She promised it wouldn't happen again," Haley insisted. "Let's talk about promises," I replied. 17 years ago, she vowed before God and our family to forsake all others. How can I trust any private promise now? "But you also vowed to stick with her through good and bad times," Ryan pointed out. "When she broke her vow that released me from mine," I said. "Why break up the family over one night?" Haley asked, frustrated. "Why am I blamed for her actions?" I shot back. "She's the one who broke the vows. Mom wants to move on and put it behind her. You're the one tearing the family apart," Haley said. It was no use. Lisa had convinced them that I was the problem. In their eyes, Mommy just needed a confidence boost, and I was overreacting. Eventually, they both stormed off when it was clear I wouldn't agree. I sat back down to watch the rest of the game in peace. Later, I smelled dinner being prepared, but I ignored it. When Ryan came to get me, I grabbed my truck keys. "Where are you going?" "Dinner's ready," he asked. "To the sports bar to watch the game," I replied. "But Mom made dinner," he protested. "I'll eat there," I said, cutting him off. At the bar, I had a burger and a few beers while watching the game. I paced myself, 1 beer per quarter, and was fine to drive home. By the time I got back, the house was dark and everyone was in bed. The mess from earlier had been cleaned up, which made me smile a little. On Monday morning, I left early. First, I called my broker to split our investments into a new account in my name. Then I contacted HR to remove Lisa from my retirement account and added Haley and Ryan as my beneficiaries instead. I updated my direct deposit to my new account and listed Haley and Ryan as beneficiaries. After wrapping that up, I informed my boss about the divorce. He was understanding and assured me I could take time off for court dates. Meeting with my lawyer confirmed my worst fears. He told me custody would depend on where the kids wanted to live, and given my recent conversation with them, I wasn't optimistic. We started the paperwork, and I instructed him to serve Lisa at her workplace on Monday. That evening, I went to the sports bar for Monday Night Football. I ignored Lisa's calls and texts, only letting Haley know where I was. Her reply was cold. When I got home, the three of them were waiting for me, their glares making it clear I was now the villain. I didn't engage. I went straight to my office and stayed there until bedtime. By the time I came out, the house was dark and everyone was asleep. Tuesday morning, I left early again. Work was uneventful, but I took the afternoon off to look at apartments. I found a nice 2-bedroom place and put down a deposit. I also bought some secondhand furniture and scheduled delivery for that afternoon. When I got home, they were having dinner. I chuckled quietly, noticing they hadn't set a plate for me. Not that I planned to eat with them. I made a sandwich, grabbed chips and a beer, and headed to my office. A few minutes later, Haley barged in. "Dad, why are you being such a jerk?" she snapped. "Because your mother cheated on me, disrespected me, and threw it in my face," I replied. I told her what would happen if she went through with it, and she did it anyway. "You can't break up the family over that," she argued. "It was just one night." "Haley," I said, turning to face her, "imagine your husband tells you he's going on a date with a younger woman and plans to spend the night. How would you feel?" "I wouldn't like it," she admitted, "but if he promised it was just once, I'd try to move past it. And it's not cheating if he tells me beforehand, right?" I sighed. Picture yourself at the altar, making vows, and telling your groom you plan to sleep with someone else. Imagine the look on his face. That's what your mother did. She stayed quiet, so I went back to my work. On Wednesday evening, both sets of parents were waiting when I got home. I knew it was an ambush. Lisa's dad, Hank, spoke first. "Mark, we're disappointed in Lisa, but you're overreacting. It was one mistake in years. Don't destroy your family over it." "It wasn't a mistake," I said firmly. "It was planned. She ambushed me an hour before leaving. It wasn't spontaneous." My mom chimed in. "Mark, she didn't cheat. She told you beforehand. She didn't ask for permission." I shot back. "She told me, and when I objected, she didn't care. I warned her what would happen." My dad sighed. "Think about your family, son. Lisa still loves you. With counseling, you can fix this." I stared at him stunned. Even my parents were siding with Lisa. You want me to forgive and forget? Pretend she didn't break her vows and disrespect me? "We raised you to be a good man," Dad said. "Think of us. We'll do what we must to keep the grandkids in our lives." I couldn't take it anymore. I walked to my room, shutting the door in Lisa's face when she tried to follow. 10 minutes later, I changed into jeans, a casual shirt, and boots. I walked through the living room without acknowledging anyone, grabbed my truck keys, and left for the bar. I spent the evening there, letting the noise drown out my thoughts. When I got home 4 hours later, the house was dark. Thursday and Friday passed the same way. I ignored Lisa, and the kids avoided me. I knew Lisa hadn't noticed the credit cards being declined yet, but she would during her Saturday shopping. On Friday evening, Lisa walked into my office wearing a sheer nightgown, stockings, and heels. "The kids are out," she said softly, closing the door. "Let's end this nonsense. Come to bed." "No thanks," I replied without looking up. "Not until I see a clinic report proving you're clean." "Stop being ridiculous," she snapped. "I need you back in our bed. Now." "Not interested," I said flatly. "If you don't, I'll call Kevin again," she threatened. "So much for it being a one-time thing," I shot back. "Damn it, it was. But if you keep rejecting me, you're pushing me back to him." "Have fun," I said. "Just let me know if you're bringing him here, so I can leave." Her frustration boiled over, and she stormed out. 30 minutes later, I heard her tires screeching as she left. With the house to myself, I started packing my things. I dismantled the bed and loaded my belongings into my truck, preparing to move out for good. That night, I slept on the couch in my office. The next morning, I picked up the keys to my new apartment and moved in with help from a couple of neighbors. When I returned to the house later, no one was home, so a neighbor's son helped me load up my desk and recliner. I wasn't leaving that behind. Later that evening, Haley called. "Dad, where are you?" she asked, clearly confused. "I'm at home, sweetheart," I answered, keeping my tone calm. "No, you're not. Your office is empty. The spare room is cleared out, and your recliner is gone. Your truck is missing too." "You're right. I moved into an apartment. Maybe I'll get another house later." Her voice trembled as she replied, "God, Dad, I can't believe you're being such an a-hole. I thought you loved us." "I do love you, Haley. Always have, always will. Just not enough to stay," she snapped. "I'm not abandoning you. You and Ryan can visit anytime. I'll always be there for you." "You left us? You're breaking up the family," she cried. "No, your mother broke up the family. I warned her what would happen if she went on that date, and she did it anyway." "She thought you loved her enough to move past it," Haley said softly. "And I thought she loved me enough not to do it," I countered. "Fine. Whatever," she muttered before hanging up. The divorce was a nightmare. Lisa fought over everything, even things she didn't care about. She insisted on counseling and wanted me to pay for it, but the judge ruled she'd have to cover it herself. The counselor didn't like me much after I told him I was only there because I was ordered to attend. After 12 sessions, the counselor gave up. Lisa made the process miserable, arguing over little things to drag it out. When it was finalized, she got the house and full custody of Haley and Ryan. I had to pay half the mortgage, child support, and spousal maintenance. She moved Kevin in before the ink was dry on the divorce. Visitation was a disaster. Lisa made it hard, and the kids were cold and distant. Eventually, they stopped coming at all. I still sent cards and letters, but they were returned unopened. My checks were cashed, though. One day, I called my mom. "Hey, Mom, how are you?" "I'm doing well. How about you? I haven't heard about Thanksgiving. Are you hosting?" After a pause, she said, "Yes, but Lisa and the kids will be here. She's bringing her new man." "Seriously, Mom? You're choosing my ex-wife and her boyfriend over me?" "We want to keep the grandkids in our lives." "This is your fault, Mark. You should have kept the family together." "How about Christmas Eve? We'll be at Lisa's on Christmas Day." "Forget it. You don't have a son anymore," I said before ending the call. That Christmas, I sat alone watching Die Hard, ignoring calls. Even the packages I sent to the kids came back unopened. 5 years later, I got a wedding announcement. Lisa married Kevin the weekend after my final payment. With Ryan now 18, child support ended too. I celebrated with a drink. I'd done all I could for my family, only to be rejected. I wanted to move on, but one thing bugged me. My name was still on the house. Lisa thought she owned it, but per the agreement, I was entitled to half the equity once the kids finished school. I contacted my lawyer. A week later, Lisa called. "Mark, what's going on?" "Just fixing up my house," I replied. "Why did a realtor show up at my door?" "She needs my signature to list it. My name's still on the title." "I'm not selling. I love this house." "Then when can I expect my check for half the equity?" "You're crazy. I got the house and the divorce." "No, you got to live there until the kids graduated. Now, we either sell and split the money, or you buy me out." "A realtor stopped by today," Lisa snapped over the phone. "She said she needs your signature to list the house." "That's right," I replied calmly. "Our names are still on the title. She can't sell it without my consent." "I'm not selling. I love this house," she shouted. "Then when can I expect my check for half the equity?" I asked. "You've lost your mind. I got the house and the divorce." "No, you got to live there until Ryan graduated. Now, we either sell it and split the proceeds, or you buy out my half." "I'm not giving you $100,000 for a house that's rightfully mine." "Good thing I'm not asking for $100,000, I said with a grin. "The equity is closer to $225,000. My half is over $110,000. "You're insane. I'm not giving you a dime," she yelled and hung up. A couple of months later, the judge ruled in my favor. Lisa had to cover my legal fees, and I got a check for $130,000. Kevin's money was used to buy me out, a decision that would come back to haunt him. I used that money to finish fixing up my house and build a workshop. I also bought a 1972 Chevy pickup in rough shape, stripped it down, and rebuilt it. I found a 427 big block engine online, had it shipped, and rebuilt it with a forged crankshaft, 10:1 pistons, a heavy cam, and ported heads. On my first drive, I punched the accelerator too hard, and the rear tires broke loose. Lesson learned: ease into the throttle. A few weeks later, I saw an ad for a car show and decided to enter. At the park, I parked my Chevy next to a 1968 GTO and noticed two redheads, a woman about my age and a teenage girl. There was no man with them, and I saw that the woman wasn't wearing a ring. "Good morning," I said, walking over. "I like your GTO." "Thanks," she replied with a warm smile. "I like your truck too." "This is my first show," I admitted. "I'm Mark." "Marie," she said, shaking my hand. "And this is my daughter, Jenny." We hit it off immediately. I invited them to sit in the shade with me, and we spent most of the day chatting. Marie shared that she divorced her husband after catching him cheating and used the GTO to secure child support and alimony. Jenny was open about her anger toward her dad for his betrayal. After the show, I invited them to dinner at Red Lobster. Over dinner, I shared my story. They were shocked to hear that my kids blamed me for the divorce after their mom cheated. "I'm so sorry," Marie said sincerely. "You seem like a good man. You didn't deserve that." We exchanged numbers before parting ways. Jenny gave me a big smile and a thumbs up, clearly approving. The next weekend, Marie and I went out for dinner and dancing. At the end of the night, she kissed my cheek, and I saw Jenny grinning and giving another thumbs up when I dropped her mom off. After a few more dates, I invited them over for lasagna. Marie commented that my house needed a woman's touch. The next weekend, they invited me to their apartment, where Marie's cooking blew me away. I couldn't stop eating, and they laughed, saying that was the best compliment. 2 weeks later, Marie and I went out again. During a slow song, she leaned in and whispered, "Take me home." I pulled back, surprised. "What?" She giggled. "Take me to your home." I grinned. "Well then." Thankfully, I was driving my regular truck, not the Chevy. When we got home, things heated up quickly. We spent the night together, 3 times before falling asleep. In the morning, I made her breakfast before driving her home. A few months later, I proposed and Marie said yes. We had a simple ceremony in front of a judge, and she and Jenny moved in with me. Jenny even started calling me Daddy, which surprised me at first, but I loved it. Life was good. Of course, Jenny and I had disagreements. She was a teenager, and I was an authority figure. But she respected me, and Marie loved me as much as I loved her. About a year later, I got a surprise call from an unknown number. "Hello." I answered. "Dad," came an excited voice. "Haley?" I asked, shocked. "Yes, it's me," she said, her voice full of excitement. "I have great news." "It's good to hear from you." "What's the news?" "I'm getting married," she exclaimed. "That's wonderful, sweetie. I'm so happy for you. I want you at my wedding." My heart swelled with emotion. "Of course. I wouldn't miss it." Then her tone shifted. "Clarence is paying for the wedding, and he'll walk me down the aisle. You won't be sitting in the front pew, but I really want you there." "Clarence?" I said, my voice going cold. "The man your mother cheated with?" "She married him." "Yes," Haley admitted softly. "I'm trying to reconnect. I want you there." "You still don't get it, do you?" I said coldly to Haley over the phone. "You think your mother did nothing wrong. I can't support this marriage. You'll end up just like her, cheating on your husband. And you've taken away the last honor I had as a father, walking my daughter down the aisle." There was a long silence before she hissed, "Fine. Don't expect to ever meet your grandkids. If you raise them like you were raised, I don't want to," I said bitterly. "Mom was right. You're such an a-hole," she shouted before hanging up. That was it. The last conversation I had with my daughter. She sent texts and voicemails, but I never listened. Her attempt to reconnect wasn't sincere. She chose her mom years ago. It hurt, but I had to accept it. The chance of rebuilding my relationship with Haley or Ryan was gone. I set my phone down and returned to the garage to work on my latest project, a '63 Chevy pickup. I was deep into the rebuild when I heard Jenny's voice from the living room. "I can't believe it," she shouted. "He actually said that to me. He blames me for everything." I hadn't realized she was home, let alone that she'd answered one of Haley's calls. "Hello," Jenny had said earlier. "Is this Haley Williams?" a voice asked. "Yeah. Who's this?" "This is Jenny Williams. You can stop calling my dad and acting like a brat. He's the best man I know, and he doesn't need to hear from someone like you." "Who the hell are you?" Haley demanded. Jenny didn't miss a beat. "I'm your stepsister. My mom married your dad, and he adopted me. You're an insult to daughters everywhere. Your mom cheated and destroyed your family. Instead of supporting your dad, you blamed him. You don't know anything about our family," Haley shouted. "Oh, I know plenty," Jenny snapped. "My biological dad cheated, and my mom kicked him out. If my mom ever did that, I'd help my dad throw her out too. Your dad deserved better." Haley was stunned silent before Jenny delivered the final blow. "Tell your grandparents they have another granddaughter. But I don't want a relationship with people who rejected their own son for a cheating wife. And when your husband cheats, call me. I'll laugh. Have a crappy life, sis." She hung up. Jenny set the phone down, noticing me standing there. "Sorry, Dad," she said quietly. "But she deserved it." I walked over and hugged her. "Thank you." Meanwhile, Haley sat in shock, still holding the phone. Dad had gotten married? He had a new family? A stepsister who sounded like her before Mom convinced her that Dad was to blame? For the first time, doubt crept into her mind. Had she been wrong all these years? Still, she shoved it down. Clarence had been there for her. He paid for the wedding, nearly $20,000. She doubted Dad could have contributed much. But Jenny's words stung. They lingered in Haley's mind, even as Lisa and both grandmothers returned from shopping. "Honey, what's wrong?" Lisa asked. "I invited Dad to the wedding," Haley said quietly. "I thought it might help us reconnect." "That's wonderful," Grandma Williams beamed. "Is he coming?" Haley sighed. "No. He got mad when I told him Clarence would walk me down the aisle. He said it would be too awkward to sit with Mom and Clarence." Lisa frowned. "I thought he'd have gotten over his stubbornness by now." "There's more," Haley added. "I found out I have a stepsister." "What?" they all exclaimed. "Jenny Williams. Apparently, Dad married her mom and adopted her. She called me after Dad hung up, and she wasn't very nice. She said Mom was stupid for letting Dad go." The room fell into stunned silence. "Mark got married, and we weren't even invited?" Grandma Williams whispered. The wedding day arrived, and as Haley got ready, she had a brief moment of sadness that her dad wouldn't be there. But she brushed it off. She'd reached out, and he rejected her. This was her day, and she wouldn't let him ruin it. Clarence beamed with pride as he took Haley's arm and walked her down the aisle. Seeing her friends and family brought Haley joy. Ryan stood proudly as one of Bobby's groomsmen. Tears welled in her eyes as she reached the altar. Clarence lifted her veil, kissed her cheek, and whispered, "Congratulations, baby." Then he handed her to Bobby, and the ceremony began. When the minister asked, "Who gives this bride away?" Clarence said proudly, "Her mother and I do." Something about those words fell off. Haley brushed it aside and turned to Bobby, smiling as they began their vows. But when she reached the part about forsaking all others, her throat tightened. She stumbled, images flashing through her mind. Bobby with another woman, devastated as she confessed to cheating. Suddenly, Jenny's words and her dad's warnings hit her like a ton of bricks. "I understand now," she blurted out, her voice trembling. Bobby frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" "Absolutely everything," I said, steadying my voice. "Bobby, do you love me? Truly love me?" "Of course I do. Why are you even asking that?" His confusion and worry were clear. "Because I can't marry you today," I said softly. "We'll get married, I promise. Just not today. I need to fix something first." His concern deepened. "Baby, what's wrong? You're scaring me." I took his hand, squeezing it tightly. "I love you, and I will marry you. But I can't do it unless I make things right first." "You're not leaving me at the altar, are you?" he asked, fear creeping into his voice. "Not a chance," I said with a reassuring smile. "You're coming with me." Turning to the guests, I took a deep breath. "I'm sorry, everyone. I can't go through with the wedding today. We'll reschedule it. Please enjoy the reception. It's all paid for. Kevin is footing the bill. The room buzzed with whispers and murmurs, but I didn't care. I grabbed Bobby's hand, and we started down the aisle. As we reached the doors, my mom and Kevin blocked our path. Haley, what on earth are you doing? Kevin snapped, his face red with anger. Do you have any idea how much this wedding cost? Lisa grabbed my arm. What's going on? Why are you doing this? She demanded. I took a deep breath and stood tall. I'm fixing a mistake I made years ago, I said firmly. What mistake? Lisa asked, her voice sharp. The mistake of blaming Dad for the divorce, I said. It wasn't his fault. It was yours. Lisa's face went pale. Haley, I'm your mother. You will show me respect. Respect? Really, Mom? After everything you did? I shook my head, anger rising in my chest. You cheated. You destroyed our family. Dad was a good role model. You weren't. Kevin blinked, confused. Cheated on me too? Yes, I said coldly. Ask Jim, the pool guy, or the landscaper. I could keep going. Lisa looked down, her face red with embarrassment. And Kevin, I added with a smirk, don't expect a refund for the wedding. I'll pay you back with the same loyalty Mom showed in her marriage. In other words, not a dime. Without waiting for a response, I grabbed Bobby's hand again, heading for the car. On the way to Dad's house, Bobby glanced at me nervously. Where are we going? West, I said, typing the address into the GPS. It's about 2 hours away. I hope Dad's home. We drove in silence, both of us still in our wedding clothes. This couldn't wait. When we finally pulled up, my heart was racing. Bobby gave my hand a reassuring squeeze as we walked to the front door. Taking a deep breath, I knocked. The door opened, and Dad stood there stunned. Haley, Daddy, I said softly. Can I talk to you? Still shocked, he stepped aside, letting us in. In the living room, Marie and Jenny sat on the couch, both looking surprised to see me. Haley, Dad said, motioning toward them. This is my wife, Marie, and our daughter, Jenny. Marie, Jenny, this is Haley. I gave him a nervous smile. Marie nodded kindly, and Jenny gave me a curious smile. Didn't you get married today? Jenny asked. I shook my head. No, I couldn't go through with it. Not without Dad walking me down the aisle. Dad's brow furrowed. What happened? I took a deep breath. We were halfway through the ceremony, and I realized I couldn't do it unless you were there. I blamed you for so long, but I see now it wasn't your fault. Mom lied to us. She made me and Ryan hate you for things you never did. Dad's eyes softened with emotion. I never stopped loving you, Haley. And I never stopped loving you, Daddy. I whispered, tears streaming down my face as I hugged him tightly. As we embraced, years of hurt and anger began to fade. It wasn't a perfect fix, but it was a start. So, Dad said with a smile, when's the wedding? Next weekend, I replied. And I need my dad to walk me down the aisle. You've got it, he said firmly. I wouldn't miss it for the world. An epiphany, Haley said softly, handing me a CD. You should watch this while Bobby and I change into regular clothes. Marie took Haley to a bedroom to change while I set up the video player in the living room. Once they were ready, we sat down to watch the video together. It started off like any typical wedding recording, but I noticed Haley stumbling during her vows. Then, suddenly she paused. Jenny leaned closer, whispering, She really did it. I can't believe it. We watched as Haley stopped the wedding and turned to confront Lisa. The room went silent as she laid everything bare, calling out her mother's infidelities right there in front of everyone. I sat in stunned silence, unable to believe what I was seeing. When the video ended, Haley wiped a tear from her cheek and looked at me. I couldn't go through with it, she said quietly. As I stood there, I realized how hurt Bobby would be if I ever did to him what Mom did to you. I finally understood what forsaking all others really means. Mom dishonored you, and by going through with the wedding without you there, I was dishonoring you too. Her voice trembled slightly, but she kept going. When I marry Bobby, it needs to be you who walks me down the aisle. Not Mom, not Kevin. She turned to Jenny with a small smile. And I need my little sister as a bridesmaid. Your words woke me up. How could I get married without you standing there for me? Jenny beamed, her face glowing with pride. It was a lot to take in. We ended up talking for hours that night. I hadn't realized Jenny had taken Haley's number from my phone and reached out to her. It explained how all of this had started, and I was thankful for it. Jenny had done something I never could have. As it got late, I insisted that Haley and Bobby stay the night in the guest room. Haley ignored calls from Lisa and Kevin, but answered her friends. Some guests took her up on the offer to party on Kevin's dime. He tried to cancel the reception, but it was too late. He ended up sulking in a corner, drinking alone. Later that night, Ryan sent Haley a video of Lisa trying to talk to Kevin. The video ended with him yelling, "Cheating strumpet," before storming off. It looked like that relationship was over. Ryan also managed to cancel their honeymoon flights and resort reservations, though there was a cancellation fee. Since Haley and Bobby already had time off, they decided to spend the week with us instead. It gave us time to reconnect. I got to know Bobby better, and he turned out to be a solid guy. At first, it was strained. He believed the lies Lisa and the kids had told him, but once he learned the truth, things changed. He even warmed up to me after spending time in my workshop. We set a new wedding date for the same venue. This time, I would walk Haley down the aisle. Marie and Jenny were involved in the planning, and Haley updated everyone in the wedding party, except for Lisa and Kevin. Over the next few months, Haley and I rebuilt our relationship. She and Bobby visited often, and we started going to car shows as a family. We brought Marie's GTO, my '72 Chevy truck, Bobby's Challenger, and Jenny's '74 Firebird. Those weekends became a tradition. Ryan even showed up a few times. It was harder with him since he was still closer to his mom, but I kept the door open for him. Meanwhile, things didn't go well for Lisa and Kevin. After the wedding disaster, Kevin moved out and filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. To avoid a legal battle, he stuck to the prenup, which protected his pre-marriage assets. Lisa got to keep the house and about $50,000, but that was it. Kevin couldn't prove he used his own money to buy my share of the house, so he ended up paying off a business loan instead. He also couldn't refile the divorce under infidelity in time, which meant Lisa avoided more penalties. But word of her affairs spread quickly, and her reputation in the community took a hit. Invitations to parties, charity events, and social gatherings dried up. Even her friends started avoiding her. And since she didn't work and relied heavily on Kevin's money, her financial situation took a dive. Kevin, on the other hand, learned an expensive lesson. Between buying out my share of the house, the wedding costs, and the divorce settlement, he lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. His social life vanished as the gossip spread. Lisa, bitter and angry, started telling people he had a small instrument and wasn't any good in bed. It wasn't long before every woman he tried to approach laughed at him. Kevin became a recluse, only going to work and then straight home. A year later, I stood at the church, dressed in my best suit, waiting for the music to start. Haley appeared at my side, radiant in her wedding dress. "Ready, Daddy?" she asked softly, her voice filled with emotion. No father is ever really ready to let his daughter go, but I smiled and nodded. "I'm ready." The doors opened, and the music filled the church. I stepped forward, holding Haley's arm proudly as we walked down the aisle together. I glanced around, feeling my chest swell with pride. Lisa was sitting in the fourth row, her face stiff with discomfort. Meanwhile, Marie sat in the front row, smiling warmly. I would join her there once I completed my final duty as Haley's father. "Who gives this woman to be wed?" the minister asked. "As her father, I give her to be wed," I said loudly, my voice steady. I leaned in and kissed Haley's cheek. "Love you, Munchkin," I whispered. "Love you too, Daddy," she whispered back. I handed her off to Bobby, then turned to take my seat next to Marie. As I sat down, I couldn't help but smile. This time, everything felt right. Through good times and bad, forsaking all others, Haley practically shouted, her voice filled with conviction. Then, with a brilliant smile, she finished her vows. The ceremony was beautiful. Cheers erupted as Haley and Bobby kissed. From the head table, I glanced around the room. Marie sat beside me, smiling warmly. Lisa, on the other hand, sat off to the side, scowling every time she looked at Marie in her old spot. She was making full use of the open bar. Kevin hadn't been invited, and I doubted he'd have come anyway. I'd done my part. I walked Haley down the aisle, gave her away, made a heartfelt toast, and shared a father-daughter dance. My role was complete. I sat back at the table, enjoying the moment, until I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Pardon me, Marie. May I borrow your husband for a dance?" Marie glanced at Lisa, then nodded. "Just make sure you return him in one piece," she said with a smirk. "I trust Mark. It's you I don't trust." Lisa and I walked to the dance floor as a slow song began to play. Keeping a respectful distance, we danced quietly for a moment before she spoke. "You were supposed to give me that one night," she whispered. "We could have moved past it. You should have known better," I replied. "I'd never be okay with you cheating on me." "It wasn't cheating. I told you about it beforehand," she argued. "That doesn't change the fact that you did it," I said firmly. "You threw away our marriage for one night." "I never stopped loving you," Lisa murmured, her voice cracking. "I married Kevin because you left. I thought maybe I'd grow to love him, but I never did. I was just angry at you for leaving." I shook my head. "It's too late, Lisa. Even if I wasn't married now, you turned my kids against me. That killed any chance we had." Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry. The best I can offer is civility," I said. "We'll be polite at family events, but that's it." The song ended, and I stepped back. "Thank you for the dance," I said before returning to my wife. Lisa's life spiraled after that. She couldn't keep up with the mortgage, so she sold the house and moved into a small apartment. As far as I know, she never had another serious relationship. Kevin ended up alone too, his reputation ruined by Lisa's gossip. He became a recluse, going straight home from work to avoid public humiliation. Meanwhile, Haley and Bobby had a long, happy marriage. They had 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. Ryan eventually married a sweet woman, and they had 2 daughters. Neither of them, as far as I know, ever cheated. Some people asked if I ever sought revenge on Lisa or Kevin. The truth? Life took care of that for me. Without a way to seek revenge that wouldn't land me in jail or backfire on me, I decided to focus on living my best life. There's a saying, "The best revenge is a life well lived." That became my mantra. I moved on and let karma do the rest. And karma? She's a cruel mistress, and her stage name is vengeance. Clarence and Kayla didn't escape unscathed. No, I had nothing to do with what happened to them, but watching their downfall unfold, it felt satisfying. Meanwhile, I rebuilt my life. I have my wife, my daughter, and my 2 other children back in my life. I'm surrounded by people who love me, and I'm living a good, fulfilling life. "Daddy, are you ready?" my daughter asked softly. No father is ever truly ready to let go of his little girl, but I smiled and nodded. "I'm honored to do this for you." The church doors opened, and the music swelled. With pride in my heart, I stepped forward, my left foot leading the way, and walked my daughter down the aisle. Marie sat in her place of honor in the front row, beaming with pride. I would join her there after completing my final duty as a father. "Don't worry, Daddy," Jenny whispered as we walked. "I'm going through with this the right way. I talked to Carly, and I'm doing it right the first time." Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. See you soon.